When you're in your mind, you have a certain system that's already in place, but your body and your deeper inner knowing knows so much more than just the things, the stories that are in your head. You get to go to a place that's much deeper, and you're like, oh, life can be this easy. How come I didn't know this before?
Put up your mask, let down your guard, and let's talk about the real real. This is the Bring Your Own Mask podcast. All right, I am so excited to bring you this guest on today's podcast episode. I had so much fun talking to her. Not only is she this amazing person that is so full of knowledge when it comes to online businesses, making money, as well as really injecting your personality into your business, she's also a digital nomad. Now, Stephanie, the guest that I'm about to bring on, she is an online business coach and a marketing mentor. She is a marketing genius. And really with her years of experience, she has guided hundreds of people into making a better income, bigger impact, and having more freedom. So without further ado, let's welcome Stephanie Smolders. All right. Welcome, Stephanie, to this show. I'm so excited that you are here. I'm really excited to talk to you about all things human design. And I know that you're such an expert when it comes to human design, especially since the fact that you're a digital nomad and you're also helping your clients specialize in designing a personal strategy for their business. So I'm so excited to put on our mask and then put down our guard and talk about the real real. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready. Got my mask.
Yes, I love it. Okay, so Stephanie, can you share with me what got you into human design to begin with?
Well, for me, it was very much a coincidence. I was on a retreat with writers. I was focusing a lot on my travel website at the time, writing lots of articles. I wanted to write a book, lots of things that I wanted to do. So one of the girls there, one of the ladies was like, oh, let's dive into our human design. And we're all like, what is she talking about? Because we were all around the fire. It was cold, winter in France. And she just pulled up this website and started to pull up our designs and could tell us things that we didn't even know about ourselves and that were so true. So it was very, very crazy to hear someone that I've met like the day before telling me things that have been my lifelong lessons and learnings. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. But I wanted to fight against it. Like my initial reaction to human design was like, yeah, right. It's just some kind of astrology thing, and they pick up on the general things in life. But afterwards, I found out that wasn't really true.
Oh, that's so interesting. And then would you say that when you first discovered human design, was this right before you built your business or was it when you already have your business?
I already had my business, but it totally transformed when I found out my design and actually started living it. Because I was more living like a generator, I would say a manifesting generator, if you know a little bit about human design. So I was always on the go, hustling. I had two companies at the same time. I was already traveling as a digital nomad. I was always on the go. And I was not being invited, but still sharing my truth and got like a lot of closed doors or like people walking away from me because my information and my energy was too intense.
Right. And it's interesting that you say that because obviously I'm a projector as well. So I completely understand what you're talking about. But for those of the people that are listening to this podcast right now that have no idea what human design even is, can you explain it in a way that makes sense to people?
Well, for me, what really helps is to look at human design as just a tool to get awareness of your truest self, the good parts and the parts that you have to be aware of. And it just gives you that information in a way that connects to your body on a deeper level. So it's not so much as reading your zodiac sign, it goes a lot deeper as to pay attention to this on your lifelong journey. Not per se this month, but it's a long term self experience of how things work for you. And once you get into your design, you get to see things for what they truly are and not what your mind wants you to think that they are.
Yeah, I love that you say that so much because obviously I'm also really into human design. Maybe not as much as you are, but I've started implementing that in my business and I've seen some huge changes. So, can you explain when you started using human design in your business, what actually changed? Like, how did that help you successfully?
Yeah, the thing is, I first started to implement it on my personal life. And once my personal life, I saw some things changes, then I was like, oh, maybe I can translate this into my business as well. Instead of really always going all out, how can I incorporate more rest? How can I give myself more time to come back to myself and reflect and trust my natural abilities more rather than to rely on more courses, more training. So I started to do little bits of that, like planning in rest periods and really looking at my belief as I have to work hard to be successful. That is like the biggest structural belief system that I had to look at in order to incorporate my human design and fully trust that I didn't have to work hard to be successful or to get more clients.
Yeah, and I love that you say that because trust me when I say that I've been so conditioned to think that I have to work really hard in order for me to get results. And I'll be honest with you, growing up, one of my dad's favorite mantra was, you got to work hard now and have fun later. And so I always thought of having fun and being silly as something outside of me. And I loved what you mentioned earlier about how human design takes you out of the mind. And so, can you explain to our listeners? Most people would think that with business, you have to use your mind, right? So, why is that not the case?
Well, when you're in your mind, you have a certain system that's already in place. You have certain patterns that are playing in a loop. So, once you're going to make a strategy for your business, for example, only with your mind, you're going to look at it from that angle. That's the only angle you'll be able to see from what the patterns and the stories and the things that you've seen that are already inside your mind. But your body and your deeper inner knowing knows so much more than just the things, the stories that are in your head. So once you start to get out of your head a bit more and start trusting on your higher self or your instinct or your intuition or whatever you call it, the more you'll be able to get to your true core rather than from your mind, the things that you've seen, the things that you perceive. You get to go to a place that's much deeper and business will feel so much easier because you'll make things, what's the easiest way for me to do this? Because your mind will come up with 10 ways that it's not possible. No, you cannot just do this thing or you cannot just post this thing.
Yeah.
But your body and your inner knowing is like, oh yeah, you can do this. And then you do it and you're like, oh, life can be this easy. Business can be this easy. How come I didn't know this before?
I love that. And so many of my clients and audience members are always messaging me and telling me, Kristen, I just can't seem to break this cycle of wanting to hustle or wanting to use my mind because, I've just been taught that way. So, what would you say to people like that?
It's okay. Like it's so normal. We've been conditioned for this for so long. You go into school and the first thing that you're learning is what you know is not correct. What somebody else knows in front of the class and what's in your textbook, that's the only correct way to do whatever you want to do. So you're not taught to trust yourself, to trust your intuition, to trust others. So that's what you come to do. You go into business and you're like, oh, that person is doing this strategy or that person is doing this. They're doing that. They're successful. So I'll just copy that. It's a natural response. So don't get beat up by, I cannot change this in a week, a month, or a year. It takes time and it takes restructuring your own systems. And that's just not done in a day. That just takes some time and give yourself the time and the awareness that, oh, it's happening again. And then just stepping away, not getting sucked into that feeling of, oh, I want to do this. And then you get into victim mode because then you're like, I cannot change this. So it's not me. You create that awareness and then you start doing something about it.
Yeah, it's so funny because that's exactly the steps that I fell through when it came to business and understanding myself. And I really feel like we're on this journey of continuing to learn about ourselves so that we can improve in our business with our audience and all that stuff. So, for people that are new to human design, right, and they really want to get more into it, what would you say are the steps to discovering your human design and how to work with it?
Well, what works really well for me is I always have my design printed out next to me. I have it printed out next to me so that I can reference certain things. And I have another one that's up against the wall here where I write certain things down. So whenever I notice something about my own patterns, I look it up in my own design. Just by doing these little things, I get to know myself on a more deeper level. And I do the same with friends. When I notice them in their natural habitat, doing something, I'll go and look at how that is referenced in their design and if that's a match, yes or no. And then we'll have a conversation about it because
Yeah.
only they will know how that is for them. For me, I guide generators, manifesting generators, manifestors, but I'm not that type. I don't have their profile. I don't have their structure. I don't have their design. So it's only based on experience, what I've seen with others, that I can guide them on. And they're still the biggest influence in how things are going to go. I'm just there projecting, holding space, and guiding them. They'll make mistakes and they'll come back and they'll learn something. And that's how it goes. So by having someone that you trust, that you can talk to, or that is open to just give you advice or hold space for you, I think that's a really big step. And having that awareness for yourself and consciously taking the steps to look at your design. Just open your chart, go into some of the Facebook groups that people have for your specific design, talk
Mhm.
to some people. If you're a projector, we hold space, we have community. So just start seeing other people in their natural habitat and how that comes back to you. What kind of things do you see? What do you notice? How do you see that in yourself? What's reflected with you? Like that really helps for me.
Yeah. And can you show me your chart again? Because I'm curious for all the people that have never even plotted their charts before. What's a good website that you recommend them?
I just use mybodygraph.com. There are others, there's a lot others that you can use. I just use that one because it's easy and it keeps all my clients' files in one place. And it depends on what you search it for. The system, the back end technology is kind of similar. It just some systems have more options. For me, if I have to give someone the information, I find this is the easiest one. It's not too overwhelming. Some
Mhm.
systems or some websites are overwhelming. That's just the one that I use.
I love that. So I'm going to put that in the description for you guys. So if you're listening, mybodygraph.com is a really
Mhm.
great tool that you mentioned. So let's talk a little bit about how you actually help your clients when it comes to designing a personal strategy. So let's just say someone were to come to you and they want to hire you, they love your energy. Talk to me about how it would be like working with, let's say, a projector client versus a manifesting generator client.
Yeah, it's a different strategy or a different approach from my end, I would say.
Right.
So it starts the same. They'll fill in a very detailed questionnaire. I'll look at their design and I'll look at their business from my projector point of view. And we'll have a conversation for often 2 hours where we're going to look at the things that you're doing right now. How do they feel? Where do you feel are gaps? How do you see yourself evolving? What do you feel is missing? What are your strengths? Like really diving into who is the entrepreneur behind the brand and how is the brand a reflection of what is happening with that person that's running it or that's building it. So that's where I always start. And with a projector, it's a lot more of just asking questions and they'll come with their own answers. While with a manifesting generator, I'll rephrase a lot and try to give them insights into, oh, I hear you saying this. Is this really what you mean? Or is this something that you're saying out of what you've been taught for many, many years? And because I'm a projector, for me, that's easy to pick up on certain things that they're just saying because they have been saying this for years. While
Yeah.
with a projector, they get to see that for themselves easily if I just hold the space and I give them the opportunity to look at it for themselves because they often always are involved with the other and don't take time for themselves. While with an energy type, they're often so much in their own energy that they just need to have that guidance. Okay, let's have a look at this specific thing that you just said.
Yeah.
What do you hear? Like, I hear this. Is that correct?
I love that. And you mentioned something called energy types. Let's explain it to the people that have no idea what you just talked about.
Oh, yeah. In human design, you have four basic types, so to say. You have the generators, which also incorporate the manifesting generators. You have manifestors, and those two are energy types. They have access to their own energy because of their sacral or another energy supplier. Then you have projectors and reflectors, and those two are non-energy types, so they don't have access to their own energy. It's not a bad thing that you don't have energy, it's just a different kind of experience for you to live life without having that energy for yourself. You'll notice it when you're in a room with a manifesting generator, I would say, because that's the easiest to see, that they're very like hyped up. They often are tapping or moving or always having a certain like
Mm.
up in the air kind of vibe. While with a projector, they're a lot more chill if they're aware of that. If they're picking up on someone else, then they take over that energy. But if you put them separately and you just watch them, you're like a creepy psychopath and you put people in a box and you watch them, then you'll easily see them in their own environment and how it is. Yeah, I wish that was my life. I love looking at people that way.
Guilty, you just caught me. I people watch as well. I love that. And it's funny because obviously I'm really into all things business and marketing, but I'm also really into wealth consciousness and raising one's wealth consciousness. When it comes to human design and money, I want to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, it's not because you have a certain type or a certain profile that's going to make you more wealthy or easily attracting money. It's more about looking at the patterns that you have and the open centers and certain channels that will influence your wealth and your well being.
Okay, so you're saying that it's not the actual type, but it's going deeper into the details of the
Yeah.
actual chart to see, and is that how someone looks at money? Let's kind of go deeper into human design and money.
Yeah, so for example, if you have an open head center, the one that's at the top from your design, if that's open, you'll often take on the ideas of other people around you. Meaning, if your parents think that money doesn't grow on trees, it becomes your reality too, because you take over that thought and you make it yourself.
Oh my gosh, that makes so much sense because I have an open center in my head. Actually, I have two. And all my life, I just felt like I was always taking on other people's thoughts, other people's beliefs. And when it comes to deconditioning, it's difficult, right? And so
Yeah.
I still feel like I'm working through that. And I'm sure you are too. And we're just constantly in this process of doing so. And that just makes so much sense now, and I feel like you can learn so much about yourself by just looking at these different channels and
Mhm.
defined centers. And so for people that don't know what these channels are, can you kind of explain what they are?
The channels are just the connectors between the different centers that you have.
Okay.
And determined on your birth time is how the neutrino stream went through Earth and just touched you on different places. So some of those channels are from your design, some of them are for your personality. And if they're connected, that means there's a channel and that is a different kind of energy than when you have a hanging gate, for example. If then someone else, like you have, for example, one hanging gate and I have the other one, which makes us a bridge, if we're in the same energy bubble, we have that channel and we build that together so we can harness the energy between the two centers. While if we are not together, we have it hanging and it becomes kind of a thing that something to look at.
I love that you say that because for me, human design has helped me in so many different ways. But I love that you mentioned how it's different for other people and that when you coach your clients, every client is so different. Your coaching is
Mhm.
very customized. It's just so fascinating to hear your journey with human design. And I'm just really excited to see where you're going. Do you have any big projects for the rest of 2021? Tell me about it.
I don't really do super big projects. As a projector, I really like to just go with the flow kind of vibe. But I do feel like I want to dive even deeper into human design. So I'm organizing a masterclass, for example, on money and human design, which is coming up, but it's in Dutch. But I'm planning on doing that in English as well and really making more of like how can you use human design as an entrepreneur, looking at the things that are in your design and how are they going to reflect in your business. For me, the whole world shift, it starts with businesses and entrepreneurs, and then it will trickle down to people who are just using that business or who are in the economy, who are part of the economy. But it starts higher up. Like when you look at sustainability, for example, we've been taught you have to recycle, you have to eat clean, you have to do certain things. But for me, it starts at the business level. If they're not giving us the right example, if they're not doing something about it, why are we on little microscopic levels recycling if a big company is not doing that? So that's why I start with entrepreneurs as to let's change it there so that it trickles down to our children.
Okay, this is so good. I'm literally listening to you and soaking all of this in because I really agree with you in terms of entrepreneurship being kind of the forefront of being a change in the world. So let's dive deeper into that, right? You talked about how you're going to have a master class with money and human design. And then you talked about entrepreneurship. I know it hasn't come out yet, and I know you probably are still kind of putting all the pieces together, but do you mind if we actually go deeper? Because I want to hear about it. I'm sure our listeners do too.
Sure.
So let me ask you, when it comes to understanding how human design and entrepreneurship fit together, what do you think the first steps are? Like, how does that manifest?
Well, for me, human design is just a tool. It's just a tool that I use right now, but it's more on a deeper level about the consciousness, about deeper levels of ourselves and not letting fear or anxiety run the show. And by deconditioning, and just human design is one tool for that, to really look at what's your core, what's your real vision, why are you here and doing the things that you're doing, what's the bigger picture. That's really what I do. And how that translates into a business and then a strategy is just the obvious next step from that.
I love that so much. And that actually brings us right into our next thing, which is I want to take off our mask and really get deep into these things called consciousness, right? And 5D consciousness and the core, like you said, about why we are here, right? Because the thing is that right now we're wearing masks, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm a business coach, you're a business coach. We play this role in society, but we don't actually really talk about core things. And so I really want to talk about that on this podcast. So let's take off these masks and let's get deep in there if you're ready for that. Okay, so you talked about having to dive deeper into core messaging and like who are we at the very core. So if I were to ask you, Stephanie, who are you at the very core level without your mask, without all these titles that you give yourself? I really want to know who is Stephanie.
Well, I'm just a girl from a very small village, which picked parents to learn from, and who has a really, really big ideal of how the world should look like. And I often feel inadequate to handle all of this by myself. Like I see this very big picture of how it could be. And then there's me, tiny me, who wants to make a difference and change the world.
Aww. Can you share with us what is one of the fears that you have? Because I think that no one really likes talking about what their biggest fear is. And I'm going to put you on the spot right now by asking you, what do you feel like is your biggest fear?
I have many though. But I guess my biggest fear is that I won't make a difference, that I won't have the impact that I think I can have, and that my lifetime will be too short to actually realize it this time.
I love that. And is this a fear that you constantly think about, or does something happen and it triggers that fear?
Yeah, whenever I'm with someone or in a group, I can pick up on what their bigger picture is or what that could be. And then I want to help them, but often I'm not invited to help or they're not ready for me to help. And then that triggers for me like an anxiety of, but I need to help and I need to help everyone and this is not working. And then months go by and they're still at the same spot. And I get so frustrated with that or bitter, I would say, as to, but it could be so much easier. And why are you not letting me in? And that triggers it a lot. So actually, every time someone comes to me or I see someone suffering,
Oh
then
my
it gets triggered.
For those of you that are listening and don't know what Stephanie means by like not being invited, it basically means that like for projectors like us, we need to be invited in order for us to actually help and make a big difference. Because other than that, we just look like crazy people that just want to insert
It just,
ourselves.
yeah, you see someone in the supermarket and you're like, oh, you're struggling with this really big life thing that's going on. And you just go up and you're like, this is what you have to change in your life. Otherwise, you're not doing life well. And then you just walk off. That's basically how it is when you're not invited. And this is a real life example of what I did one time.
No way. Okay, so again, it just comes off the wrong way when it comes to projectors. I don't know about any other sign because I feel like when my fiance, who's a manifesting generator, does that, people don't look at him the way they look at me when I do that, right?
Yep.
So let's go back to what you were saying about how that has happened to you before. Let's talk about maybe a failure of yours when you didn't follow your design and you just went for it. What happened?
Well, it used to happen a lot when I was in high school, I would say. That's just the example that's coming to my head, where one of my friends were having issues with their boyfriend, and I would just say, this is what's happening. This is your issue. This is his issue. Why don't you do this? And then I would kind of walk off, or I would talk about something else because for me, then the whole situation is over. But I just dropped the bomb on them. And that often cost me relationships, friendships, family life, everything basically.
Yeah. So I love that you shared the story of you in high school and that happening to you. For those people that are listening and feel like they have certain beliefs that are keeping them captive from where they are today or holding them back from achieving their dreams, can you talk about your belief systems in terms of like what did you have to not believe anymore in order for you to be where you're at, and what kind of beliefs are you still working on?
Yeah, so one of the big things related to this is I have to think before I speak. That was like one of the biggest things that I had to work on, and I'm still working on, as to you need to have a filter. You need to think 10 times before you say something. You cannot just say what you think because that's a bad thing. But as a self-projected projector, that's just what I'm really good at. So people started to limit me, and then I started to limit myself. I wouldn't speak when someone would ask me something. I would be very shy and quiet. I would be the one in the background. Or there have been periods where it was the opposite, where I was very much in your face, but kind of not saying the real thing, but going around in circles because I was afraid if I would say the real thing, then people wouldn't like me anymore. So I would change depending on the situation I was in and depending on the people I was in. And that's something that I really had to work on as an entrepreneur, as to speak your truth, really stand up for what you believe in, and making sure that the things that you're saying are aligned with your core values. If I was keeping things easy on a surface level, I wouldn't make the impact that I'm making right now. And it still could be better. I'm still working on this. But coming out and saying that I use human design, that I'm into spirituality, that's only like a 2 years ago kind of thing that I started to really do this. And I've been an entrepreneur for 12 years. So, I mean, it's been a while for me to look at this kind of pattern or story that I was telling myself, like, people will not like me if I share my truth.
I love everything you're saying right now because I exactly know how you feel. Because I think that when it comes to entrepreneurship and people that want to build a personal brand, they want to authentically be themselves, right? Because that is what is most freeing. It brings the most happiness. But because they're being seen by so many people, right? It's not easy being an entrepreneur, that it's easy to fall back into what people are saying about you or wanting to change certain things. I know for me, for sure, when I first started my business, I deleted some of my friends off of Facebook because I was so
Mhm.
terrified of what they would think of me if they saw what I was doing. So for those people that really want to express their authentic truth, really want to build a personal brand, what is your biggest advice to them?
Well, the easiest advice would be to don't care about what other people think, but it doesn't work that way. So, what I often tell others when they go through this is make a separate account or make a place where you feel safe and invite the people that you want to invite and practice there. so that you retrain your brain and your body as to it is safe for me to be here, it is safe for me to share. Once you are at a level that you feel safe, then go and do that on your other platform. Other people don't have to know that you have a second Instagram account, for example, where you do stories, where you talk about, or that you have a podcast show, but no one except a few people listens to it. Just experience that it's okay and safe for you to share your authentic truth and your inner self.
Mhm.
And once you recognize that that is safe for you to do, then go and do that on your actual platforms.
Yeah, I love that so much because I wish someone told me that when I first started my business because I deleted some friends. We're still not friends because apparently if you're not friends with people on Facebook, that means you're not really friends in real life. So
Mm.
I got so many of my past friends telling me like you deleted me off Facebook, so we're no longer friends anymore. Like this is a real story, by the way. But thank you for sharing that because I think that a lot of people are still trying to figure it out. I know a lot of my clients are still at a space where they just feel very uncomfortable stepping into their true selves. And it's not easy, saying like, hey, like this is authentically me. I feel like it's kind of a progression. So one of my last questions I want to ask you is, we obviously put on some face masks, we had some girl time. I really want to ask you, what does self-care look like to you?
Well, self care for me is not per se putting on a mask and taking a bath and a glass of bubbles. For me, it's very much looking at the core me and giving myself time to look at my shadows and look at my accomplishments and celebrating myself as to the steps that I'm taking on a personal level. That for me is really self care. And that's something that I often schedule in where other people are like, I'll go get a pedicure. For me, is I'll go take my journal and write somewhere.
So you actually schedule in your self-care time?
Yep. Otherwise, it's not happening. If it's not in my calendar, it's not happening.
Okay, did you guys hear that? We got to schedule in your self-care time because obviously you are important. And by scheduling in self-care time, how would you say that has helped your business?
It made me so much more relaxed and not coming from a place of fear or anxiety as to I have to reach this goal, I'm not reaching this goal. Like often on Sunday I'll just sit with myself and I'll reflect on the past week, and not as to I could have done this better, I could have done that better, you should have said this. No, I look at where have you made steps, where have you felt out of your comfort zone, where are you proud of, what kind of achievements are you going to celebrate today. Those are things that I do on a regular basis because that's what makes me come up as the leader that I want to be, not from a place of ego.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing all of that because I feel like a lot of our listeners are people that have really struggled with understanding who they are. And I think that having you on this podcast has allowed them to kind of have a peek behind the curtain of like, okay, this is the potential that I may have. And human design can really open that up for me and not having to really worry about being someone else, right? You mentioned earlier about, most entrepreneurs find this need to copy someone else or model after someone else that they know in the industry. And I think having you on has really opened up people's eyes that human design can really have you step into your authentic self. So before we close, I want to do this rapid question segment with you. So we're going to do a 1 minute where I'm just going to ask you these random questions and I really want you to answer them as fast as you can. Are you ready for it?
I'm ready for it.
Okay. So first question is, what color is your toothbrush?
Orange.
Who do you admire the most?
Oprah.
Ah, what is one thing that's on your bucket list that you haven't gone through yet?
Going to Peru.
Okay. Name an ice cream flavor that's your favorite.
Raspberry.
Morning or night person?
Afternoon.
Okay, I'll take that. What is the strangest thing that you've ever eaten?
I don't know how you call them in English, but the one, the grasshopper. That's it.
What? You had that?
Yeah, in France, I caught them myself. I'm a vegetarian, but I ate grasshoppers.
Okay, I think
I
let's talk about this grasshopper a little bit more. Did you eat it raw or was it already dead?
It was barbecued.
Oh gosh.
It was my first experience as a digital nomad. I was looking after an Airbnb, running it with the family, and they had kids, and there were lots of grasshoppers, and they live off grid. So one afternoon, me and the kids were to catch grasshoppers, and then the dad barbecued them, and then we ate them.
Oh my gosh. And did it taste good?
It was not bad.
Oh my gosh. I had a chance to try grasshoppers in Thailand and I couldn't do it. Okay, last question. If you were to be remembered for one thing before you leave, what would it be?
As someone who spoke her truth.
Aw, I love that. Well, Stephanie, thank you so much for being on the show. If people want to find you and learn more about you, where can they do so?
I'm mostly on Instagram, and that is just at stephanie.smolders. You can find me there. And my website is the same, stephaniesmolders.com, those two places.
Awesome. And I'm going to put all of your links below. So thank you again for coming on the show. It's been such a pleasure and just talking all things human design with you from another projector to a projector. It's really been an honor. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.